hiring freeze and the way that this affects the folding in of USAID to
Sure.
the State Department, how, given the fact that these people are not considered State Department employees, what opportunities, if any, are going to be given to them to be able to reapply or
Sure.
not for their position?
Sure. First of all, the USAID fold in, that in a way is kind of the genesis of this, right? We knew that was going to happen. USAID was going to become a part of the State Department. And in this framework, what you'll see, and it makes, I think, perfect sense, and people seeing this will see that it makes sense, is that instead of this monolithic entity that was, its own object in Washington, D.C., making decisions about aid and where the money would go, the usual experience, and I've experienced this with the Secretary's travels and his conversations with the leaders and also our own embassy and consulate staffs, is that you would have donations or funding for a project that the country itself was not interested in or did not want and had other needs, that the embassy staff or the ambassador was never consulted, that the opinions of the people who are working in the country were not consulted. So they would see money going into a nation, as an example, put in to fund something that was even, in some cases, detrimental to the nation that we were working with, or opposed by an ambassador, and yet there was no input and no action. In this particular kind of reorg, it's about consolidating things, right? Weaving certain offices into other bureaus, making situations smaller, reorganizing it, literally. And in that case, you will see the bureaus, which used to have a lot of power, but had really kind of lost that in a certain way through the giant bureaucracy that became evident through the 70s and 80s and 90s. And that you would have a dynamic now where the intention is, and described in this plan, to have each regional bureau have the element of the USAID that is relevant to that bureau, so that they would be working together, and it would be a coalition, if you will, of ideas and minds and efforts to then also bring in and have the embassies, the ambassadors, and the governments we're working with having a say in making sure that the money that's donated is relevant to that nation, is relevant to the region. And that's what will be, that's where USAID essentially is going, is into positions where, as I've mentioned to you, as we were doing our review of USAID, is don't mistake a change for being something for indicating something is gone or missing. That it was never about us abandoning our commitment to funding to any kind of life-saving efforts or our work with other nations in assisting them. But it was going to look different, and now it will. But it will not just look different, but it's actually going to be within a functional framework to make sure that any aid that goes out is aid that the nation, that we work with the nation on, that we work with the embassies on, and people on the ground with an interest who are stakeholders will have a say in that. I think that that's certainly a much more functional way to move foreign aid through.
But on the employees themselves,
sure.
Are already sort of in limbo in terms of how their jobs
Sure.
were going to change when the department was going to be taking over
Sure.
USAID. Are those employees going to have the opportunities to apply for other positions? How many
Well,
people?
some will. So again, this is a proposal. This obviously could change. But as you have offices that are cut, or even some bureaus that were set up for a specific situation that end up being cut entirely, that you will have people who then, Foreign Service officers, the career workers, et cetera, being able to apply for something else. So these are, it's a dynamic where you've got a certain number of open seats that exist, and then people who, of course, will then be out of the seat where they were if, in fact, their office is cut or even folded in to another bureau. So these are, again, this is, again, a roadmap, and it's a dynamic, whereas we've said in the past certain dynamics where people, and this is new for me as somebody who's never worked for government, very much in a way like the military, where you can be working for the State Department, working in a specific, let's say, embassy overseas, and then that job ends, and then you come home and you get slotted into a new job. That, I think, for the American people, maybe for large corporations, that makes sense. But that's how it works here, when, of course, that's possible. So that is possible, and we will clearly watch that as it plays out. Yes.